Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Eruvin Daf It continues the discussion about somebody who sets up an Eruv Techumin, and the Eruv Techumin is in a place which is difficult for him to reach. We had discussed where it was up in a tree. Here we're going to discuss where it's on a wall, but we're really trying to prove something about our last discussion in the previous daf. The Gemara then refers back to the Mishnah, which discusses an Eruv which is at the bottom of a pit. Now we'll have two Mishnayos. The first one discusses the halachos of something high in the air, where it's considered in Rishus Yachid, where it's considered in Rishus Harabim. And then the next Mishnah talks about where you lost the key to your Eruv Techumin. Does that count as an Eruv or not, since you can't actually reach your particular Eruv? Okay, so first of all, we had seen in the previous Gemara a statement of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah had said that if your Eruv is in a place where you could theoretically reach it before Shabbos, you don't have to actually reach on Shabbos. We could do something to make it accessible. That's considered as if it is accessible, even though it's actually not accessible. So he was saying that if it's hanging in a basket in a tree, since you could theoretically tilt the basket and then you would halachically be allowed to get it, it's good even if you didn't tilt the basket. So Gemara has a kasha on that from a brisa, which discusses where you put an Eruv on the wall. Now, a wall could have an Eruv in various heights. It could be above 10 tvachim, it could be below 10 tvachim. The Gemara is discussing a situation where the wall itself below 10 tvachim is Rishus Harabim. That we've seen. A wall could be Rishus Harabim. Any object could be Rishus Harabim if it is something that the public uses to adjust their burdens a lot. Otherwise, a wall would be a Carmelis. It's not a Rishus Yachid, and it's not a Rishus Harabim. People can't do anything with it. But here it's a Rishus Harabim. Now, above 10 tvachim, it's a Rishus Yachid, because Rishus Harabim only extend up till 10 tvachim from the ground, as always. So here we have a situation where somebody wanted to set up his Eruv on the ground near a wall. He wanted to make his residence on the ground near the wall, and he has the Eruv placed on the wall. So the brisa says if the Eruv is below 10 tvachim, so then halach is that the Eruv counts. Why? The Eruv is in Rishus Harabim, and he's in Rishus Harabim, and he could bring the Eruv to himself. You're not allowed to carry through a Rishus Harabim. Okay, well, we're referring to a situation where he could bring it in small increments, bit by bit, not more than 4 amas at a time. That's only an Issur D'Rabbanan, and like we've seen, it's okay, an Eruv counts even if it's an Issur D'Rabbanan to get it to you. It's only a problem if it's an Issur D'Oraisa to get to you, because it only has to be doable during Bein Hashmashis. Now that's the first halacha there. Then the brisa says, but if this Eruv is stuck on the wall above 10 tvachim, then you have a problem, because you're in Rishus Harabim, it's in Rishus Yachid, you can't get it from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Harabim. Now Rashi adds over here that you have to be at least 4 amas away, otherwise your entire 4 amas around you is counted as Rishus Yachid, and it would be within your Rishus Yachid. So you got to be 4 amas away. But that's the first half. Now the second discussion is where you are actually on top of something. You're planning on spending Shabbos on top of a chest of drawers, or a bookshelf, or some piece of furniture that's tall, and your Eruv is stuck on the wall again. So here the halacha is the opposite. If your Eruv is above 10 tvachim, then it's good. We're assuming that there is no Rishus Harabim between you and the Eruv, and the Eruv is in a Rishus Hayachid, above 10 tvachim, you're in a Rishus Hayachid, you can bring it to you. Okay, no problem. If the Eruv, however, is below 10 tvachim, now you have a problem, because we're referring to a situation where the wall is a Rishus Harabim, and therefore the Eruv is in a Rishus Harabim. You, being 10 tvachim high, are in Rishus Hayachid. You couldn't possibly get to it, and therefore it's no good. You're not able to reach it. So the Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, who said that if I could do something that would put myself within reach of it, and I would then be able to get it, so even if I don't do it, it counts as if I did, because we could say, since I could do it, so it's good enough that the Eruv, I could get to the Eruv if I would do something. I don't have to actually do it. So he says, so you could just turn over this piece of furniture that you're on, let it lie sideways. You'll then be below 10 tvachim, and therefore you and the Eruv are both within 10 tvachim. You're both in a Rishus Harabim. So what's the problem? You should still be able to bring it to you. Truth is, the furniture itself would only be a Carmelis. It's not something, obviously, that the public is going to be using, and it is high off the ground. It's more than 3 tvachim. Therefore, it counts as a Carmelis. But you're allowed to bring the object from a Rishus Harabim into a Carmelis Midaraisa. So it should still be good as an Eruv. So Rabbi Yirmiyah answers, okay, not a problem. This is referring to a case where the furniture is nailed into the wall. Fine, so that's why you can't tilt it. Rava says, I'll tell you a different answer. We're talking about a very long piece of furniture, and it's up flush with the wall. So you can't tilt it towards the wall. That wouldn't help you. You have to tilt it away from the wall, and then it'll be more than 4 amas away. more than 4 amas away, you can't bring it because you have to carry it 4 amas. I bring it bit by bit. So the Rishonim asked the kasha over here, and the Rishonim say that Rava is saying that Rabbi Yirmiyah is not. He never said that you could have 2 statements of I could theoretically do it, therefore it counts. You could theoretically do bit by bit, and you could theoretically tilt over the furniture so that it's lying on its side. That's 2 steps removed. Rabbi Yirmiyah never said you could do that, and therefore that's not an answer. So the Gemara asks, well, hold on a second. Why don't you just have a rope attached to the Erev and a window in the piece of furniture, and then you could bring it to you. You could pull the rope, and it'll fly to you. That's only an Issa D'Rabbanan. The Gemara says we're talking about a situation where you don't have a window, you don't have a rope, so that's not the kasha. That's not something you could. It's not a practical solution. Okay, now the Gemara quotes the next phrase in the Mishnah, which we had seen, the halacha, that if you have your Erev in the bottom of a pit, it's good, even if the pit is 100 amas deep, you're still considered to be a kosher Erev, you're able to reach the Erev. So the Gemara asks, what's exactly the case over here? Where are you? Your Erev is in the bottom of a pit. The pit is definitely Rosh Hashanah, but where are you? If you are standing in Rosh Harabim, so how do you get the Erev from the Rosh Hashanah to the Rosh Harabim? You can't. If you're standing in Rosh Hashanah, so for sure, what's the problem? The pit is for sure Rosh Hashanah. It goes all the way up to the sky. It certainly goes all the way down to the bottom of the pit. It's for Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. There's no issue. So the only other option is that it's at the bottom of the pit and you're also in the bottom of the pit. Well, that's for sure not a problem. You're both in the same Rosh. Why would I think there's any issue? Gemara says, no, you're standing outside the pit, and the area you're standing is a carmelis, and it's an Issa D'Rabbanan to get it out of the pit into where you are. And the chiddush here is like Rabbi's halacha, which we've seen earlier in the last few daf, that as long as it's only an Issa D'Rabbanan to get to your Erev, that's okay, because the moment of Bein Hashmashos is when the Erev counts, and you can get to it then because it's permitted to do an Issa D'Rabbanan during Bein Hashmashos. This takes us to the end of the Gemara, and then we get to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses the halachas of an Erev placed at the top of a tall reed or pole high in the air. The Gemara is not going to focus on that halacha. The Gemara is interested to know why it's not a problem of an Erev on a tree, on a growing object. And the Gemara will distinguish between 2 types of trees and bring 2 situations. So first of all, the Mishnah says if you place an Erev on top of a tall reed, which is not growing, it's cut off from the ground and then stuck in. So it's a detached pole stuck in the ground. The Mishnah's halacha is that even if it's 100 amas tall, it's fine, it's still a kosher Erev. Rashi explains that we had seen halacha earlier in the name of Rabbi Yehuda that the place that the Erev is placed has to be at least 4 tvachim wide. If the top of the pole is 4 tvachim wide, then we have a problem. It's a Rosh Hashanah. Anything that tall and 4 tvachim wide is Rosh Hashanah. But you are standing on a Rosh Hashanah. So how can you get to it? So Rashi's explanation is that it's 4 tvachim wide at the top, so it's big enough to hold the Erev, but it narrows as it goes down, and therefore it's not a Rosh Hashanah at all because it's not 4 tvachim wide all the way down. Okay, now the Gemara asks, the fact that we're saying this halacha has to be where the pole is detached and stuck, that seems to imply that if the pole would be still growing, if it's a tall tree or something that's 100 amas tall or anything like that, you would not be able to put an Erev at the top. The implication is that the problem would be that you're not allowed to get it off the tree because it's usher to take something off the tree. Now that isser to take things off a tree on Shabbos is an Issa D'Rabbanan, which means that this Mishnah holds that if you have to violate an Issa D'Rabbanan to get to your Erev, it's not a good Erev. That's not like Rebbe's Shita. That must be the Rabbanon. The problem is that we had seen earlier that the previous Mishnah, which is really the Reisha of this Mishnah, is the Rabbanon. How do you fit the 2 together? Someone says this question was asked by Ravada Bar Masna to Rava, and he answered him and said it was already asked before you by Rami Bar Chama to Rav Chisda, and he said, okay, fine. So this one is the Rabbanon. The one before was Rebbe. Not such a big deal. Ravina has a different answer. Ravina says, no, this really fits with Rebbe. Here, since it's a soft reed, it's going to break. It's almost for sure going to break when you take something off it. That would be a violation of an Isser D'Oraisa. The problem here is not an Isser D'Rabbanan, that the Rabbanan said you're never allowed to take things off a tree. That's a far-fetched concern, but it's just the Isser D'Rabbanan you have to worry about. You don't have to actually assume that the Isser D'Oraisa is going to happen. That Isser D'Rabbanan, Rebbe said you don't have to worry about it as far as Hilchas making an Erev Tchumen is concerned. However, this is definitely going to break, and therefore you're going to end up doing an Isser D'Oraisa, and that's why you're not allowed to get to it. On a related note, the Gemara brings an incident that there was once a battalion of soldiers that was quartered in Narda, and there was no room for the Talmidim. So Rav Nachman said, go outside before Shabbos, bend over piles of reeds so we should be able to sit on it. We should have like chairs out in the field. So they asked him, how do you allow to do that? It was Rami Bar Chama again who asked Rav Nachman, how are you allowed to do that? You're not allowed to sit on something that's growing. You're not allowed to use growing things. As we see here, that you're only allowed to place the Erev on a pole that's cut off already. So the answer, there's a difference. These are hardened tree-like reeds. There you don't have a problem. Our Mishnah is referring to where you have soft reeds. The Gemara says, how do you know the difference between hard and soft? The Gemara says, I bring you a brisa. The brisa discusses kelayim. And the brisa says that the species called konin is a type of tree, and therefore it's not kelayim. It's not a problem of the kelayim in a vineyard. It also lists atadin and hegin. Those are types of thorn bushes. There's a different brisa that says that konim are kelayim. It's a type of vegetable. And together with that list, you have kelayim and you have kido, which is a type of spice, and urbinin, which is aravos. So you have a contradiction. Is konin or reeds a type of tree or a type of vegetable? On that, the Gemara says it must be. One is talking about when it's hardened, and one is talking about where it's still soft. So on the subject, the Gemara says, hold on a second, you listed kida here as a vegetable, but that is not entirely true. We have a Mishnah that says that you're not allowed to make a grafting of pagum onto white kida. Pagum is a vegetable, and you're not allowed to graft vegetables onto trees. Pagum is a spice of some sort. So Gemara says, so you see that kida is considered a tree. How could you tell me that it's a vegetable? My answer is that this is talking about white kida. White kida is different than regular kida. White kida is a tree, and we were talking about regular kida, which is a vegetable. Now we get the next Mishnah, which discusses what happens when you have your Erev locked in a closet and you lose the key. So you're allowed to use the Erev or not. The Gemara is going to flesh out the two opinions in the Mishnah and add a third opinion and explain exactly how this works. So the assumption here is that we're referring to a closet that's built out of bricks, it's out of blocks of some sort. And the Mishnah says if you have your Erev in there and you lost the key, so you can't get to it, it's a machlekes. So Tanna Kama says it's good. Eliezer says it's no good, you need the key. Okay, so the Gemara asks, how does this work? And the Gemara explains as follows. The reason why the Tanna Kama says it's okay is because the Tanna Kama holds you're allowed to break the wall. You don't need the key. You're allowed to bust through the wall and get to your Erev. How does that work? It's the opinion of Rabbi Meir, and it's talking about on Yontif. On Yontif, you're allowed to break down a wall as long as the blocks are not cemented in place. You could push one of the blocks out. You're just sliding it out. It's not an Isra of Seisu. It's not an Indian of destroying, and therefore you're allowed to do it on Yontif, and there's no problem to get to the Erev itself. That is the opinion of the Tanna Kama. Now we have Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah who says no, there is no heter. He does not hold of that. You're not allowed to break the blocks, and even if you'll find the key, there's no heter, there's no mutter way for you to bring the key to here, because he holds like the opinion of the Chachamim who say that even if it's in Rosh Hashanah, you have to go from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah to get it here, and he holds it not allowed to carry from Rosh Hashanah to another Rosh Hashanah. Now, there's a middle opinion, which may be Rabbi Eliezer himself, or it could be someone else, maybe a different person named Rabbi Eliezer as well. That's not quoted in a Mishnah, but it's brought in another brisa. And he says it depends where the key is found. If the key is found in the fields, you're right, you can't bring it. He also agrees you can't break the wall, and therefore it would be usher. He adds, however, that if it's found in the city, you are allowed to. And he holds of Rav Shimon who says you're allowed to bring the key from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. There's no issur to carry from one Rosh Hashanah to another. Therefore, you're allowed to bring it, and it's okay. Now, the Gemara asks, hold on a second. You told me that the Tanna Kama is only allowing it on Yontif, because he's going like Rabbi Meir. So what does it help? What's the problem? On Yontif, you're allowed to carry the key. So what's this whole thing? It's the city, isn't the city, Rabbi Shimon, the Chachamim, you're allowed to carry the key. It's Yontif, you're allowed to carry. So Gemara says there's a phrase missing in the Mishnah. You have to say that the Tanna Kama said is all on Yontif. And then the Tanna Kama says, and I agree that if it would be Shabbos, it would be Aser. And on that, Rabbi Eliezer comes and says, no, it depends if it's in the city or if it's in the fields. You can carry it or not. And on that, the other opinion argues and says, no, it doesn't depend because he doesn't hold that you're allowed to carry from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. And in all situations, you're not allowed to bring the key.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.